So consumers have this year already bought two products which were later recalled by the regulatory bodies in South Africa. A few weeks ago, Clover recalled their Go Nuts peanut butter, while the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority recalled Benylin cough syrup. Now, the regulator has since recalled two batches and is in talks with the South African manufacturer Kenvue as investigations continue. But are we seeing too many products being recalled lately, and what does this say about our quality control mechanisms in the country? Well, to discuss that, we are joined by Matlou, who is Food Safety and Sustainability Executive at the Consumer Goods Council of South Africa. Matlou, thank you so much for joining us. A good morning to you. I think let's start off with just your response to the Benylin cough syrup recall, what you thought when you saw that story break. Let's start there.
Thanks for having us, and good morning to you and the viewers. We are comforted every time when there's a recall of a particular product, because it tells us that the system is working and we can pin down the risk or the safety issues before it gets spread into the consumer base. So we are comforted by that. It means that the mechanisms that are put in place in terms of the manufacturing side are working.
So there is, of course, a concern that we might be seeing an upsurge in recalls, particularly over the past few years. Is that something that you are noting?
It is something that we are noting, but if you look at the stats, and I'm comforted by the site which the viewers can visit, the OECD website, it shows that if we look at the stats that we have had, if we just count the number of recalls that we're having as a country, we are not doing badly. It means we are doing well in terms of managing our processes. If you can look at some countries, they go into the hundreds or into the thousands of the recalls that they are having. Although we commend those efforts, meaning that more and more people are picking up these things and they are reporting them publicly so that the consumer can be protected. So from a South African base, I would say even though every day, each year we get a recall here and there, and it's different types. It can be medicine, it can be an electronic product and a food product. It is not widespread that every other month or every quarter or so we're having a recall. But as we always say, when products are recalled, we are comforted that we have averted the risk that could have gotten to consumers.
Yeah, and unfortunately, though, when I start to list the products, and of course I won't mention brands here because some of these issues have been resolved over the years, but I'm going back all the way back to 2018. These are some of the products that we've seen recalled. Talc powder, Purity, which is a child's, well, no, that's not, let's say children's food rather, and then we've seen, and of course, some of these have been resolved. I need to mention that. Canned foods like baked beans that have been recalled over the years. The list goes on and on and on. At some point we even saw frozen vegetables recalled, chocolates recalled, even products for relaxing hair having been recalled, and now peanut butter this year, and of course now we're talking about a cough syrup. The question then that begs for me is, what does our quality control system really look like in the country? So what does that process look like in South Africa of when we check the quality of products before they get to the shelves?
I would say we've got a solid quality control or quality control systems in South Africa, rest assured. However, if you look at the incidents that might bring about a product recall, sometimes it's a machinery error that can, and this is when we see the stats, worldwide, most of the recalls that come about is when there's a misprinting in terms of either the labeling and it's marking, not so much of the safety. So, but with that, just an example, if you mark a product that has got an allergen and you somehow by error on the label not put that allergen, you are required to have a recall because people might react to that particular allergen that you haven't marked on the product. So it goes to simple things, simple errors that could happen in a facility over and above the safety issues that sometimes it might happen that it gets introduced from the raw materials. Sometimes it gets introduced from the environment in the facility. But this is where we always preach that where there's high-risk products, for the companies, let's introduce something that we call a positive release, where before each and every consignment gets out of the facility, we can rest assured and say this is a positive consignment that we can release. So we put measures in place in accordance with the risk of the product. But we cannot be 100% sure. Sometimes there are activities that are happening. And for instance, we can make an example when the product is produced elsewhere and you as a retailer is putting the products on the shelves. So it's a shared responsibility amongst the value chain so that we can just ramp up in terms of the testing along as we trading with each other.
Yeah, but the reason why I ask about, whether or not there's a synergized process for quality control, because I asked the question, essentially you talked about labeling, which I can understand can become an issue. But in December, one fruit brand confirmed that their products had mold and were recalled from shelves. This is just this past December, right? So that sounds like a health risk. So do we need, perhaps I should ask, what is the work that needs to be done then to synergize our quality controls of the products that we put out to our consumers? What's missing?
Not necessarily what is missing. When we look at the different cases, every time we pick up that we could improve on a particular thing. Recently, what we picked up could be when we look at what we have and the mechanisms that we have, is that at some point as a country, we need to know holistically who's producing our products so that visibility is there. And this is where we leverage off the GS1 standards that we work from a CGCSA point, where we're saying, as a country, we need to say, producer A or raw material A, are you known? Can we identify you with identifiers that are relevant to your site? So that when you communicate with the rest of the value chain, we know exactly what you are doing. And in real time, suppliers can share data, be it the certification, if we bring about the issue of the peanut butter, they can share verified, we can link to a site that verifies the certificate that you have issued, what was issued from your side. So until there's visibility and we can communicate in a common language, we see a little bit of pockets that might come in terms of how we are trading, because there needs to be security in the supply. I need to know the information that you are feeding me. As I said, sometimes a manufacturer can, when you give information to my site, it needs to be verified. You need to tell me that you have tested, and I need to trust that you have tested, so that we do not duplicate resources, because some of these tests are very expensive. But if we can verify the data, share it in a common way, with using the same language, then I think we could get a win. But manufacturers and retailers all know that every time they pick up something, they ramp up the testing, they change the mechanism, they change the laws in terms of at what point do you release a product, so that they can improve as they pick up challenges arising.
Yeah, and I think part of the issue then is that the consumer watches, the news and then hears that a product has been recalled, but at that point, they may very well have already bought that product and it's already in their home and it may already have been consumed. So are you at this point at liberty to tell us, as food safety and sustainability controls or head thereof at the Consumer Goods Council, products that you are keeping a close eye on at the moment, perhaps before they hit our shelves, if at all?
Well, from a Consumer Goods Council of South Africa, we do not do any testing, because we do not have the verification and the mandate to go out and inspect. However, this is why we always say that as a country, collectively, in as much as the manufacturers and the retailers and the value chain and the raw material producers are testing and putting mechanisms in place, if we can get a ramp up from law enforcement, how this helps is that if we are sharing data and if the industry is compelled to have a pool of data that we put in a more centralized, controlled manner, with the department doing the enforcement, we are able to pick up and see what are the trends, so that we can then inform everyone to say, put mechanisms in place, we are seeing a rise in terms of this particular risk.
Okay.
So that we can protect it even before it happens.
I think it's a fair call to make, right? A centralized system that really shows where we are in terms of quality control for food safety. If these are issues that we're having in the formal sector, goodness, I can only imagine what they're looking like then in the informal space, Matlou.
The comforting part, only the research data that I can refer to is what was done previously on our street food. We all love our street food,
yeah.
And the comforting and the assuring, the university, Tshwane University of Technology does this research on an annual basis. They have picked up that because the informal sector sells products on the daily, and what is not finished they take home for consumption. So a little bit of assurance is there that when we utilize what we have immediately from the informal sector, the risk is averted because we do not continuously sell it off tomorrow because we could affect the cold chain thereof. So a little bit is being done, but we are saying that we can never be more vigilant. We always have to apply the food safety rules. All
right. And just a final question before I let you go, and hopefully this will give us some sort of, I suppose, resolution, if you will, right? How fast are we? How efficient are we at dealing with some of these food safety crises when they crop up?
Well, I would say, having sat in a number of recalls through the years that I've been with the CGCSA, I think with the protocols that we have in place from the CGCSA and the relationship that we have with the authorities, we are able to act speedily. And in most cases, you'd find that the relevant authorities would have a meeting with the affected suppliers and retailers, and we also come in order to facilitate so that everyone gets the same message. And we truly appreciate when we voice out and we put out into the media, the consumer is able to react speedily to avert any risk that could come to their side.
Before we end up with an outbreak like we did a few years ago with listeriosis, it's important work that needs to be done there. Well, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it.